Welcome to the Fresh and Safe podcast, brought to you by the Fresh Produce Safety Centre. I'm your host, Damien Farrelly. This pilot series has been delivered via the Horticulture Food Safety Initiative project, which is co-funded by Hort Innovations Frontiers, retailers, regulators, and industry partners. We're here to share fresh ideas and practical insights to elevate food safety in the produce supply chain. Whether you're a grower, a food safety specialist, service provider, or part of the broader food safety ecosystem, join us as we navigate the evolving landscape of fresh produce food safety in New Zealand, Australia, and around the world. We have a two-part episode this week, which was recorded at the International Fresh Produce Safety Symposium in Sydney. In part one, our former CEO Farzana Adams catches up with Meegan George from Freshmark. Freshmark is the peak industry body representing the independent fresh produce sector in New South Wales and Australia. They discuss how people in their industry are so passionate about fresh produce, and also how we might attract more people to the industry in the first place. They also discuss the importance of food safety in the independent sector, how data, AI, and recognition might help streamline compliance. And they also discuss how family businesses use a personal touch to connect with their customers and add value. In part two, our technical advisor, Susannah Roelofsz, catches up with Gail Woods from Fresh Markets Australia to discuss our fundamental guidelines for fresh produce food safety. They talk about how Gail uses them to support growers, the value of explaining the why, and the importance of having this trusted source of information on food safety for the fresh produce industry.
Today, I have the absolute pleasure of having Meegan George with me from Freshmark. Thank you so much for making the time, Meegan. Now, you just said something about the conference that I'd love for you to repeat.
It's my first time attending the Fresh Produce Safety Centre conference, and I'm absolutely loving it. So for all of you out there who thought about coming but haven't, it's well worth the investment.
So put it in your calendar for 2026. All right, Meegan. So let's start a little bit with your background and your role and why we're having this conversation with you today. So tell me about yourself.
So I'm the CEO of Freshmark, and I've been in the industry now for about 3.5 years. Prior to that time, I've worked in finance, in superannuation, and in not-for-profit sector. So completely different. So when I applied for this role, I didn't even realise it was in fresh produce. And I must admit at the time, I said to myself, oh, goodness, what am I doing? I've never been in this sector before. Why would I work in this space? Why would somebody want me to work in this space? And I realised I actually have quite a close family connection to fresh produce. So I grew up in a place called Quakers Hill in Sydney. We had the traditional 3-acre family plot, and I had access to fresh produce every day. We had vegetable patch, fruit patches, cows, calves in the backyard, pigs, chickens, and eggs next door, and flowers around the corner. So really, the only thing we had to buy was when we needed it was packaged food. And also at university, I actually worked for Ziggy's, which was an independent retailer at Belconnen Markets. And so I was working the checkout and security at that time. And my love of fresh produce has never waned.
That's fantastic. So can you tell me what's different about this sector? What's different about fresh produce?
It's the people. It's their passion, absolute passion for the sector. And their pride in the generational component of this sector. They are multi-generation. They build deep relationships with everyone in their supply network, in particular their growers, and they are very passionate about making sure this industry survives and that it adds value ultimately to the consumer. Their main goal remains and will always be providing great quality produce at a fabulous price, which is safe to eat. That is what drives them every single day.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Now, when we were chatting earlier, you did say to me that the landscape is shifting, though, right? Things are changing. And I'd like to just spend a few minutes with you talking about what that looks like. What's shifting? What's changing?
I think there are some very bespoke issues for our sector, potentially also across different sectors, but there are issues that are continuing to be troubling. We haven't quite found a solution to them yet. So I wouldn't say they're changing. What I would say is the impact of those issues are becoming relevant now. So one of the largest issues for us is labour. We have a baby boomer workforce and they've all had decades worth of experience. and they're reaching retirement age, and they've worked hard and they deserve a great retirement. But as I said, this is an intergenerational business often, and in particular the landscape that I look after, which is the fresh produce sector for New South Wales, and in particular those industries or businesses within Sydney markets, they are multi-generational. And so you'll have the grandparent passing to the father passing it to the son or the daughter, etc. And we're finding that we are having less young people enter our industry, and those that are actually already in our industry aren't necessarily encouraging their children to remain. And one of the main challenges for that is around the 24/7 workforce.
Yeah.
And it's not like in, say, for example, your parents' time or my parents' time where there might have been one parent working. This is a two working parent economy. And so it does add strain to the family dynamics when you have both parents out 24/7. And so that's one of the issues, that intergenerational component and that changing work-life balance. The fact that we've moved to a 24/7 cycle of work for our industry. We all know we work rain, hail or shine, but also it's the lack of career availability here as well in terms of knowledge of career availability and education pathways. We had quite a few segments here in today's session that spoke to that issue and spoke to actually having internship programs and trying to put a program of education together to meet these shortages. As we're seeing it, whether it's in QA, whether it's in wholesaling, whether it's in providoring, whether it's actually in manufacturing the goods itself into canned goods, there are major gaps with youth entering our market. So that's also a major challenge for us. What I want to see is being able to have a government that invests in education and invests in encouraging the young to actually come into our sector. And I want to be able to see career pathways and education pathways that are easy to understand and to draw those youngsters in and keep them. Because once they're here, it's like Hotel California. Once you're here, no one wants to leave. I love it.
Yes, exactly. Look, yeah, and most of us that have been in industry for a while, we've been in it for decades because it's a fantastic industry to be part of. Port Innovation is also here. They're exhibiting and they're doing a lot of this work around career pathways and things. And I think industry needs to get on board and encourage that and support it and be part of the solution.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I want to get to a stage where if you're a vet, you do a veterinary program. If you're a doctor, you do a medicine program. We need to do the same here in our industry, but we need to make it accessible. It's not just within our sector. We need to get into schools earlier. Yes. We need to have them actually select the degree they want to do in high school before they go to uni, which then catapults them into some form of an internship or a work program that brings them straight in. We need clear pathways.
They need to understand what we do.
Correct.
We need to showcase it.
That's exactly right. And there's a lot of great things in our industry we should be very proud of and showcasing.
Absolutely. Excellent. Thank you. So we'll switch gears to compliance.
Sure.
Okay. Talk to me about compliance.
So compliance is often spoken about. It's an ever-present challenge for all businesses. We all see the necessity of compliance frameworks, in particular food safety. Where I think the challenge rises or comes to the fore is the balance between what is practical and what is overburdensome. We all know that it takes time, it takes money, and that can have a detrimental impact to the business if it's not balanced correctly with the commercial realities of running that business. So what we're looking for in our sector and in Freshmark in particular is that balance between commercial and compliance frameworks that obviously brings delicious food to the table that's safe.
What do you think we can do to simplify that messaging for the growers? Because that's one we hear quite a bit. It's too complex. You're making it too difficult. How can we simplify it?
So from my perspective, it's about providing a homogeneous, equitable, one data shop for collecting the information that is used for multiple frameworks. And I don't think quite yet we're here at this stage in our evolution. That's our data challenge, our AI challenge in this space. We collect it once, it's used for multiple purposes, and we don't have to keep reproducing the same things time and again to tick a box to achieve a particular certificate.
And what do you think we need to do to get there?
I think there's a lot of investment that needs to happen in AI, in particular in our industry. I heard Atlassian today, one of the founders of Atlassian today on the news talking about data centers being set up here in Australia for the Asia Pacific. So it would be wonderful. We have a lot of fantastic data, but in reality, how easy is it to access? We heard today from Freshcare that a lot of their growers are still operating paper-based every single year. They must have an amazing pool of data that they could bring to the fore to be able to assist us move this process forward. But being able to capture it electronically, being able to upskill individuals to being able to do that is also a challenge. So it's not just about the training, it's not just about the build, it's the encouragement and the onboarding of doing so. I'd also love to see situations where if we have a certificate, for example, in Freshcare, it's used in multiple circumstances. And whilst we're well and truly on the way of doing that, I'd love to see it more and more. Yeah. And where it's possible to actually utilise Freshcare's certificate rather than actually creating a new certification process for particular products that we offer in market, that'd be amazing. And it should be the first thing that regulators and others think about. What's out there already? How can we utilise that? Even if it is a great quality self-assurance framework.
Yeah, and we hear that a lot, right? Let's not duplicate, let's simplify, record once, use multiple times.
Record once, use multiple times.
Yeah, absolutely.
It would save so much money and provide so much efficiency to industry and make that passport, that certificate, that verification valued.
And we heard that earlier today in the Freshcare assurance session is the value of the certificate as an asset.
Correct.
To the business. Yeah, so that's really interesting.
Rather than a cost impost.
Absolutely. It's a value driver. Mm-hmm. Let's talk a little bit about the consolidation piece in the independent sector. Can you unpack that for me?
So from my perspective, we often hear a lot, and it is in IBISWorld stats that I've seen recently in the past year or so, where we're seeing a decline in the independent sector. But when we actually pop out and we unpack that, and I actually go out and I speak to the independents and I speak to those who serve the independent sector, which is the wholesale community, which is one of my member groups, what I'm hearing is actually a more promising and encouraging story than that. We are a 24/7 business, but we aren't a 7-Eleven. So we are a sector that takes a great deal of pride in producing quality product that is available to our customers at any particular point in time. And we take great care in selecting what our customers want to eat and being able to price that accordingly. So what we're seeing is where we have, I guess you could say, a reduction in the independent retail space, they may not have got that equation right. The actual commercial reality of the business, getting the customer needs correct and balancing that off, obviously, with the compliance component. So that triangular need is not being met optimally. What I am seeing, however, is that there are certain businesses that actually have this triangle of value right down pat. And they're actually expanding. So they're going from 1 premise, 2 premise, 3 premise, 5, 7, etc. And they're making a great success at it because they have that value proposition right. They're also spending the time to actually understand what the customer wants and needs. And they will go to the extra effort to get that produce, whether it's white asparagus, whether it's your cherry eggplants, or whether it's some other specialty product. They'll make the time to source that for their customers. And those that do it will have the reoccurring business. Yeah. They also take the time to get to know their customers. We're not one of thousands that enters a particular store, goes through the checkout and moves on. Quite a lot of these businesses are family run, once again, multi-generational. And what you'll find is the customers reflect that. The grandfathers come to shop, the mums come to shop, the daughter or the sons come to shop, the grandchild's come in and ask for a banana. And so they're very well known. It's like a coffee shop. You go in, once you go in there for a while, they know your order. They'll say, "Hi, Meegan. Right, soy flat white, one equal for you then." And off they go and they make it. Yeah. And so where you have that personal touch, I think it makes a difference. And those that are great know that.
And that's something you said earlier. It's all about relationships.
It is.
In our industry,
it absolutely is.
Yeah, I like that. So, look, I appreciate your time. We're not going to take up too much of it. So we'll do a little wrap up now. Sure. And I'd just like you to talk a little bit about looking to the future. What are some practical tips that you can give to our listeners as we look to the future and we think about produce?
So it, funnily enough, just links back to what I've said. It's know your market, know your customer base, know what they want, how you can serve them and offer the best service that you possibly can at the best price. And that is your full circle market, whether it's your grower, whether it's your customer, whether that customer is an independent retailer, a providor, or some form of food service entity, or whether it's the mum and dad entering your food store. Know your customer, what their wants are, what their needs are. The second is to be adaptable to change. We're, in many aspects, a very stable industry. We have growing cycles. We have certain produce that we grow. Sure, we're reliant on the weather, but at the end of the day, from a horticultural perspective, there are several components of our industry that remain the same year in, year out. We know when we're growing things, we know in what cycles we're growing them, we know where we're going to be delivering them, etc. But there are a lot of aspects to our industry that are changing. And so we need to be able to adapt and adapt quickly. And one of those is obviously AI and data. And another obviously is the changing workforce. Labour is one of our largest input costs, and being able to actually manage that relationship of bringing in youth and having recognition of 24/7, a 24/7 business cycle is quite critical. So we need to be able to adapt to our changing circumstances. The third is get to know your industry association. And I'm not saying that because I'm an industry association. I'm saying that because they're your best fighters. They will fight for you. One voice is more powerful than many. They are your voice. Their job is to fight for you for regulatory change, to make your life easier, to make your business life easier, to provide product and services that reduce your input costs, to upskill your people or help you upskill your people. They're there for you. So if you're not part of an industry association, you should be. And those of you in New South Wales, look up Freshmark.
Excellent. Look, and I think in a similar vein, you know, sitting here as the CEO of the Fresh Produce Safety Centre, we're a not-for-profit organisation that can support growers as well, especially as some of the feelings of complexities and people thinking about food safety and what they need to do. We have things like the guidelines for fresh produce food safety. We have grower guides. So there's a lot of support around to enable growers to do what they need to do more effectively. We are here to support.
Absolutely, we are. That's our role at the end of the day.
Yeah,
that is our role.
Thank you so much for your time, Meegan. I really appreciate it.
Most welcome. Anytime.
Thank you.
And it's great to be recording today at our International Fresh Produce Food Safety Symposium, and really glad to have caught up with Gail today. So Gail is joining us from the Fresh Markets Australia, and one of our key focus areas on the symposium is the launch of the upcoming guidelines. So I'll give Gail an opportunity to introduce herself and then see how she uses the guidelines in her daily work as well.
Thanks, Susannah. Really great to be here. It's been a great conference so far. At Fresh Markets Australia, back in 2001, we implemented a service called Fresh Test, and it was a call from industry for a cost-effective and efficient method of having microbial and chemical residue testing. So as part of that process, about 5 years ago, we did a review and implemented an IT, much more valued IT platform. And as part of that, we went further into being able to provide an investigation or advice of sorts through our results. And through those results, you have to have a benchmark. And what is that benchmark? And when it comes to microbial criteria and criteria for water testing, it's a pretty deep dive. So there may well be, for chemical, there's advice from Farzana or APVMA as to what MRL limits are, and there's microbial standards and so on. But when it gets right down to the nitty-gritty, things like water and how many CFUs, etc., we look at that microbial criteria and look at things like the fresh produce safety guidelines. And that's one that we do refer to. So often we will have users of our service, people who are undertaking the testing, and they'll come back and say, oh, what does this mean? And that's where we'll refer them to the guideline, where we're quoting where those particular criteria come from, in addition to also being able to provide them back to their standard owner, be it Freshcare or SQF, to talk about specificity.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. And how easy is it to find that information, or I suppose the trust in the information that it's current and it reflects, risk at the moment? Yeah.
I guess the trust comes from where did the guideline actually come from. And there is a quite established criteria on how the guidelines came about. the technical experts that were involved. And from a fresh produce perspective, I guess there are many eminent technicians within the industry that go to actually doing that work background. And I guess that's where we get the trust from.
So something we're, really focusing on with the review of the new guidelines is that we've provided the criteria before, be that science-based, but now more around the interpretation of those results. I think something that's coming out quite clearly in the symposium is, what do we test for? What do the results mean? And things like E. coli, what is the, the type of E. coli that we're finding? So for you, is there enough information in there, or do you think that's part of what will come out in the new review?
I'm suggesting it possibly will, and that will be able to support when we speak to a grower. So a grower, and there's not very many of them, I must say, so they may have a detection for E. coli. What does that mean? Well, it's not the end of the world. Yep. It is only an indication. So now you could do further tests, or, well, what further tests would I do? And those sorts of things, we're not in the position and should not be in the position of providing advice around that. Yep. So they need to be able to be pointed to a particular area, and that's where we would refer them back to their standard owner or to other eminent things like a guideline to be able to give them a bit more of the why they need to do things. We'd be able to say, well, other clients will do X, Y, Z, but that doesn't really help. But the why is so important. We've heard over the course of the conference that the why is important. You tell someone why they need to do something, and they're much more able to work with that than just because.
Yeah. I'm hearing so much around, that cost of compliance, and it is a cost to test. However, it can be more costlier not to test. So that's a messaging that we need to get across. And I think building that history of test results so we can actually start using that information for insights. So
certainly. And as I say, from an Australian produce perspective, there are very few detections, which shows that there's no systemic issues, but that testing can be used as a tool. It's a verification tool for your food safety scheme and for your good agricultural practice. More and more we're seeing people doing swabs of their equipment and so on, so swab testing. Probably a decade ago, that wasn't something that was even a thing, but now they're swabbing their machinery, they're swabbing their processing lines to ensure there's not cross-contamination and the like. As I say, that's a newer thing. So it is showing that people have confidence in the testing that they're doing.
All right, well, thank you very much, Gail, for joining us today, and really appreciate yesterday we had a bit of a exercise of who uses our guidelines the most, and Gail, you won. You were one of two, so really appreciate that you're a high-end user. I think something for the FPSC is to make sure that we grow that awareness of the guideline and definitely making sure that it's user-friendly as well. So really appreciate your feedback, as always, into the guideline. And look forward to the rest of the symposium.
Thank you.